When you are ready, go ahead and get started.
When you're at home and you want to take a shower, you will find shampoo, soap, and deodorant. And if you're thirsty, you can find milk and maybe coffee. And of course, you have toilet paper. But what if I tell you that there's one country that doesn't have any of the things that I've just listed before? You may think, nonsense. Which country doesn't have toilet paper that is essential? Well, unfortunately, Venezuela falls under this misery. My name is Andrea V, and I'll be presenting Venezuela's current issue of scarcity of consumer goods. Venezuela's economy is in a huge downfall due to economical mismanagement and that the government is unable to control the high rate of inflation, among other problems that have caused the issue. In order to tackle this problem, we must go back to when the main cause of this issue of scarce consumer goods is a lack of US dollars that has led to price control, smuggling, and inflation. These contributing factors have led to the scarcity of consumer goods in the country. It is for these reasons that the government must take immediate actions to bring more consumer goods to the country. In order to tackle this problem, we must go back to when Chavez was president. Hugo Rafael Chavez Frias was president and politician of Venezuela from 1999 to 2013. He brought in the Bolivarian Revolution, aimed at reducing poverty. The way this worked was by government provisions, which is when the government gives for free to the poor housing, education, healthcare, and food and clothing. You may think this is great, there's nothing bad with it. However, how did the government do this? Where did the government get the land to house the poor, and where did the government get the money? He proceeded to nationalize the economy, which means that he has total access to the company's production so he can use it for his Bolivarian Revolution. Now picture this scenario, because we will use it later. In the middle, we have the economy. On the right-hand side, we have Chavez and the Bolivarian Revolution and the poor. And on this side, we have the rest of the country, which is us, middle class, and so, according to Venezuela's country profile, Chavez's first move was a nationalization of the energy sector, owned by US firms. Two things happened here. One is that those US firms will invest in other countries, like Colombia, most likely. And the second one is that the reason why, when I lived in Venezuela 6 years ago, I had no electricity for 6 hours. That's the reason why, because Chavez nationalized the energy sector. So therefore, if we have here the economy and the energy sector, the energy most likely goes to this side, not to this side of the country. It's for this side. This leads us to issue number one, which is a lack of US dollars. In the worldwide trade, countries use a foreign currency to pay for imports and exports. The issue in Venezuela is that it has no dollars. With no dollars, you can't pay the imports, which means you don't have basically nothing from other countries. The reason why is because the currency controls enacted a decade ago by the government of former Hugo Chavez. There are so few US dollars in Venezuela to pay for the imports of newsprints. Now, this is talking about the newsprints in particular. Now imagine this. I'm in a newsprint market. If I don't have money, I don't have dollars. So with no dollars, I can pay for the imports. If I don't have imports, I don't have newsprint. If I don't have newsprints, I can supply newspaper for the whole country. So what will happen is that the market will close. This is exactly what every market in Venezuela fears of, closing their country, closing their market. So they have to move to other countries. The reason why Chavez enacted the currency controls is because he needed large payments in dollars to pay for his desired changes for the Bolivarian Revolution. The second issue are the price controls. Price controls are limits, restrictions on the market's economy. It's a limit. Venezuelan markets are in need of price controls, but efficient ones. The problem in Venezuela is that governments are putting price ceilings in the market's economy, which means that they cannot sell their products higher than that price. As Roberto Despradel, a Venezuelan economist, he argued that price controls are affecting the investment and the supply. If you say to me that I have to sell my iPhone for $200, but the price at which I'm selling it is at $300, Therefore, I will sell it, I will indeed sell it at $300, not less than that. So at the end, what I end up doing is not selling. This, in the markets, can be pictured with a supply and demand graph. The blue line is a supply and the red line is a demand. This is a price, this is a quantity demanded. This black point is a equilibrium point in which the market sells their products to this price to satisfy this demand, this quantity demand. This black line is a price control that makes the market inefficient. What happens is that the market has to sell their products to this price to satisfy this quantity, which is way bigger than they have to sell the products. So what will happen is that the markets don't have the capacity, don't have the money to satisfy that quantity. There is a very high demand in Venezuela for toilet paper. Of course, everyone needs toilet paper. So therefore, if you have higher demand than the supply, you can't satisfy that demand because you don't have the money, you don't have the resources. There are various solutions to solve these two problems. Solution number one is by raising the price of petrol. As you know, Venezuela is part of the OPEC organization, and therefore it's an oil-rich country. So why not take advantage of the oil? If you produce oil and you export oil, then take advantage of it and so you can receive dollars. As Mr. Ramirez said, the chairman of the State Oil Corporation and vice president of the economy, he argued that by reducing the money supply and raising the domestic price of petrol, it will bring more money to the country. That is indeed what the country needs, money. Money for what? To pay the inputs so they can have more consumer goods to provide from this side and this side of the country, or and the rest of the country. Venezuela is failing at selling oil. I can give you one example, which is with the Dominican Republic. There's an exchange, there's a treaty that Chavez made with the Dominican Republic and many Caribbean countries that Venezuela sells for free to the Dominican Republic the oil, and in exchange, they don't get money, they get beans. This is a waste of money. Venezuela right now needs the money. There's no way that we receive beans in exchange. And also, instead of you may say like the Dominican Republic's economy it's bad. We don't have the money to pay you for the oil. But Venezuela helped you once when the Dominican Republic was struggling. So why not you help us, Venezuela? That's now very bad. It's a very bad situation. The second solution is a country's production, which is exports. Venezuela was once a major exporting country, and in order to bring that back, we must reestablish the country's production. Venezuela has millions of hectares of land which has been used to house the poor, so there's no left for production. Enrique Capriles-Radonsky was the candidate for the elections of 2013, which he unfortunately lost. He proposed in one of his assemblies that Venezuela has enough land to turn Venezuela into a food-producing country. We have 30 million hectares of fertile land. We are importing fish. Those are large coasts. If we have a large coast, why not take advantage of that coast and start fishing and start producing fish? So instead of importing it, exporting it. So therefore, we have consumer goods, we have fish for the country. And also we receive dollars. As a result, we have an equal amount of goods being imported and an equal amount of goods being imported. But facing reality, many economists and the people itself from Venezuela argue that Venezuela's economy is at its peak and there's no road pulling it backwards. The solutions are out there, but the problem is that as long as the government doesn't see the problem that's going on in Venezuela, the solutions will be far out of sight. As a Venezuelan, I hope that there is a future. I know certain solutions that the government may not know them, but there are solutions. But as I said before, I can't do anything about it. It all lays on the government. Thank you.
Let's open up to questions.
Right
right now, as many of you may know, there's an asphyxiation going on with the price of petrol. How do you think that will have an impact on President Maduro to maybe apply the solutions that you are proposing?
Well, right now, the OPEC organization has the United States producing a lot of oil in a cheaper way, so therefore the USA is a large export country. So that reduces the exports for the other countries. And that has to scare Maduro, because Venezuela depends on the oil. It's like it's the boat sailing, and the water is oil. As long as it has oil, he doesn't see the rocks that are beneath the water. So he keeps going and going. But when the oil finishes, and that's what you're telling me, Maduro will have an impact, he will have to find ways to solve that problem and not crash with the rocks. So that's happening right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I like your example.
Miss Alba.
Andrea, I thought that, given like the history of the United States and the way that it has treated other countries, kind of like going in, taking what it wants, making all the money that it can from its own natural resources, and bringing it back to the U.S. without a lot of thought for that country. Like, wouldn't it be a great goal of Venezuela to be totally self-sufficient and to not have to have that many dealings with the U.S. so that in the future they're not so ruled by international markets?
Well, that's good that you said that, because Chavez is anti-imperialist, which means he doesn't like the USA. He doesn't like us. However, USA was a major client to Venezuela in oil. So what you say makes sense. If USA starts its independent, then Venezuela can be self-sufficient. But in a short term, it may be good, but in the long term, it may be bad. Because you lose money in a way that USA is becoming that high, Venezuela is distant. That's in the long term for us. So time.
Going on with Ms. Alexis, are there trade sanctions put on Venezuela when Chavez took over, nationalized the oil industry from the United States, making it difficult to get a good dollar for the price of oil?
Can you repeat the question?
So, if the United States, when Chavez nationalized the oil industry, did the United States put any trade sanctions or restrict trade with Venezuela and other countries as a result of the nationalization of the oil industry?
I didn't research how the USA got involved during that period of time when Chavez started nationalizing, but I think that Obama definitely tried to intervene in that situation, but Chavez didn't pay that much attention. But that wasn't the research, but that's what I think. Okay.
You said that in the treaty between Venezuela and the Dominican Republic, they have an exchange for beans and oil. Is there any negative effect on having that trade-off?
Yes. Right now, let me ask you a question. What does Venezuela need the most? Beans or money? Money. So instead of importing beans, why not use our land to produce and to grow beans? So therefore, the country relies on itself, not on the Dominican Republic for beans. Hey, Marie.
So I was wondering, to what extent do you think that, they like you always hear about Venezuela, how the people are responsible for who governs them. So to what extent do you think Venezuelan society was at fault for electing this government or falling under this government and then dealing with the mishaps that government brought on them so much?
Well, the society is made to blame for the situation. The poor is the one that most supports the government, Chavistas. And that doesn't have really an impact because they say this is not accurate, so don't quote me, that the reason why Chavez is winning because it's being a fraud. But I can give my opinion on that. But what I can say is that the society, the smugglers and the people who work on the black market, They go to the markets, they buy as much of it as they can of milk, toilet paper, all of the resources are scarce, so they can sell it in the black market at an extremely high price, 10 times higher. And the smugglers, they go to Colombia, to the frontier to Colombia, and sell it. So the market ends up being empty for us. We can't find those products unless we buy it from the black market, which is high, extremely high. So that's why scarcity consumer goods is going on due to society and community.
Have the relationships between Venezuela and the United States
What I know is that Obama said to Venezuela that he's prohibiting entrance of some Venezuelans. Not all, I don't know which was what. That's what's happened before Chavez died. I don't know what else has happened. Any more questions? No. Is there something?
Yeah, so you were talking kind of at the beginning like this, so when Chavez comes to power, this group over here, the poor, as you mentioned, start to kind of see the benefits of the Bolivarian revolution. And at the same time, the group over here, which you said was the middle class, and also, you know, those who own the utilities, the media companies, things like that, they start to see hardship. So are your solutions just essentially trying to revert, like pretty much put the hardship back on the poor? Because,
No.
okay.
What I'm trying to say is that, for example, land. I'm saying that land for production and land for the poor.
Mhm.
So it's 50-50.
Okay.
I don't want them to be the whole land for the production and not land for, no. I still want the poor to be supported by the government.
And do you know how much, like percentage-wise, in terms of income in Venezuela, percentages for who falls into this class of the poor versus middle class? Do you know in your research? Did you find that?
I don't.
Okay, no, I'm just curious. Any other questions? All right, good work.